I never took nobody's life, so.
Tampoco te puedes salir y decir, sí.
Un día atrás o 2 días atrás habían detenido a un compañero.
They embody the very essence of the ruthless cartels, functioning as the indispensable driving force that keeps operations running smoothly in the shadows, faithfully executing every command of their bosses. Who are these individuals, you ask? Join us as we delve into the lives and learn of the cartel's most influential prodigies and uncover their gripping stories. Number 10, Rosalio Rodriguez. At an age when most teens were starting high school, Rosalio Rodriguez was caught up in something much darker. You see, Rodriguez was part of a group of American teenagers from the impoverished streets of Laredo who were enticed into the drug wars across the Rio Grande in Mexico. They were promised money, fancy cars, and women. Born in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico in 1990, Rodriguez grew up on both sides of the United States-Mexico border. With 9 siblings, he lived in a tiny wooden house on cinder blocks, surrounded by a yard without any grass. His father worked in construction while his mother was a hairdresser. Before turning 12, Rodriguez was a well-behaved boy who respected his elders, did reasonably well in school, and spent most afternoons playing ball at a nearby park. But everything changed when he was 13. Seeking adventure, he crossed the bridge into Nuevo Laredo and was introduced to the Gulf Cartel by his friend Gabriel Cardona. Cardona took him to a ranch where he was supposed to report for duty under Miguel Trevino Morales, a Mexican former drug lord and leader of the criminal organization known as Los Zetas. It was there that Rodriguez witnessed his first killings, and his life took a terrifying turn. He was turned into a child soldier for Los Zetas. That same night, Trevino had Rodriguez take his very first life, and he became part of a team of highly trained assassins chosen from Mexican-American youths. They received training in handling handguns, assault rifles, and even rocket launchers. Trevino then unleashed them on the streets of Laredo, Texas, where they committed a series of high-profile murders. The pay was substantial, ranging from $10,000 to $50,000 per hit, and they even received lavish gifts like luxurious cars. However, after a failed operation in Mexico, Rodriguez knew he would face Trevino's wrath and certain death. In 2007, at the age of 17, he decided to surrender to the authorities and agreed to testify against the Zetas. During his capture, Rodriguez revealed to detectives that he had taken the lives of 30 people and admitted feeling an exhilarating thrill with each one. He compared it to being a real-life Superman or James Bond. As a consequence of his horrific crimes, Rodriguez was sentenced to 70 years behind bars. Number 9, the Queen of the Pacific. Sandra Avila Beltran is a legendary figure, standing out as one of the few women who had direct access to the top tiers of the cartel world. She has been immersed in the Mexican drug scene since the late 1970s, living, working, and even forming deep connections within its highest circles. Born in October 16, 1960, Avila was destined for a life deeply intertwined with the narco realm. Her father, Alfonso Avila Quintero, is related to the founder of the Guadalajara cartel. As a child, she experienced luxury beyond imagination. She had it all: private tuition, piano, and dance lessons, and frequent trips to SeaWorld and Disneyland. Now, while her childhood friends found themselves rising as leaders in the Sinaloa cartel, young Avila charted a different path. When she was 17, she enrolled in journalism classes. However, her aspirations as an investigative reporter were abruptly shattered when a jealous boyfriend deeply involved with the cartels kidnapped her. Within months, she left town, abandoning her dreams and delving into the drug underworld. Her skills as a daring car driver, accomplished horseback rider, and legendary sharpshooter helped her thrive. Her charm and flirtatious nature also worked to her advantage. By the age of 21, she found herself privately meeting with the notorious drug lord Amado Carrillo Fuentes, known as El Señor de los Cielos. From that point on, her life became immersed in the cartel full-time. A quick learner, she rapidly ascended through the ranks, garnering the attention and admiration of men at every step. Over time, she developed close ties with El Chapo Guzman and even dated a top leader of the Sinaloa cartel. At the peak of her career, she demonstrated her penchant for carrying suitcases filled with millions of dollars in crisp $100 bills. Her daring exploits also earned her the moniker La Reina del Pacífico, or the Queen of the Pacific in English. However, in 2002, her luck took a turn. She found herself unexpectedly seeking help from authorities when her teenage son was kidnapped for a staggering $5 million in ransom. Though she eventually reunited with her son, the incident raised suspicions that triggered an investigation. Avila went on the run, living as a fugitive for several years. Her fugitive status came to an end when she was arrested, alongside Espinosa Ramirez, on September 28, 2007 in Mexico City. She was ultimately convicted of laundering money for billions of dollars worth of drugs smuggled from Colombia to Mexico. Following her arrest, Avila was extradited to the United States in 2012 to face charges as a key link in a drug conspiracy. Initially maintaining her innocence, she eventually struck a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to being an accessory after the fact, and receiving a 70-month sentence in 2013. After her deportation to Mexico in August of that year, she was promptly rearrested on money laundering charges. This time, she was sentenced to an additional 5 years. Finally, in 2015, she regained her freedom and settled in Guadalajara, Mexico, where she continues to reside to this day. Number 8. Child Soldier. Let me introduce you to Edgar Jimenez Lugo, better known as El Ponchis, according to Mexican crime reporters. Now this is a chilling story. Can you believe that Edgar was just 11 years old when he took his very first life? He was born in San Diego but raised in Mexico. It turns out that Edgar was kidnapped at the age of 11 and forced to work for the Cartel of the South Pacific. It was an unimaginable childhood, to say the least. Fast forward to August 2010 when Edgar was 14 years old. That's when he committed an even more horrifying act. He took the lives of 4 young men, a student, a university cook, a gas station attendant, and a small business owner. The gruesome details are heart-wrenching. Their bodies were mutilated and strung up from a bridge in Cuernavaca, a popular tourist spot just south of Mexico City. The shockwaves reverberated through the nation. In December 2010, Edgar was apprehended by the authorities. Surprisingly, when he was arrested, he remained remarkably composed and admitted to a string of crimes. It caused quite a stir when Mexican authorities allowed him to be paraded before television cameras, fielding questions from reporters. The scene was surreal, a young teenager answering a barrage of inquiries, surrounded by masked troops. Their identities were concealed, but Edgar's face was in full view. Standing there with his hands tucked into the pockets of his cargo pants, Edgar revealed that he was paid weekly in both dollars and pesos. However, when asked about his understanding of the gravity of his alleged participation in the murders, he claimed to have been under the influence of drugs, unaware of his actions. According to Edgar, he had been threatened by a cartel leader, which added another layer of complexity to his already disturbing story. At that time, Edgar's tender age turned him into a media sensation, shocking not just Mexico, but the entire world. It shed a harsh light on how the country's brutal drug war was tragically devouring its young population. Following his trial in July 2011, Edgar was convicted in juvenile court of homicide and organized crime charges. He received the maximum allowed sentence in Mexico, 3 years in custody. In 2013, at the age of 17, he was released and transported to an undisclosed facility in the United States. There, he received counseling, supervision, and shelter. It was an attempt to rehabilitate him and provide a chance for a different path in life. Number 7. The rise and fall of Gabriel Cardona. Gabriel Cardona was just a poor regular kid from Laredo, Texas, when he found himself joining the ranks of the Zetas, a group of former Mexican special officers turned drug traffickers. His family's connections on both sides of the United States-Texas border made him valuable to the ruthless Zetas cartel, as he could easily cross back and forth without arousing suspicion. At the age of 17, in 2004, Cardona was initiated along with 70 other recruits at a Zetas training camp. They received combat training from Colombian mercenaries, and Cardona was eventually handpicked to become a sicario, an assassin for the cartel. His first assignment, which drew the attention of the United States law enforcement, was to eliminate a corrupt Mexican cop named Bruno Orozco. Orozco had defected from the Zetas to join rival Sinaloa boss Chuy Resendez. Cardona, along with another American teenager, carried out the hit in broad daylight on a roadside in Laredo. While most of his crew managed to escape, Cardona was taken to the police station for questioning, where he had an encounter with Detective Robert Garcia of the Laredo Police Department. Despite being quite talkative about his involvement with the Zetas, Cardona managed to secure his release on bond by fabricating a story about his presence at the murder scene. Upon returning to Nuevo Laredo, Cardona quickly rose through the ranks, eventually becoming a commander of the Laredo operation. He earned an annual income of $1 million and had the authority to recruit his own members. In April 2006, Zeta's leader Miguel Angel Trevino ordered Cardona to form a hit squad and prepare for a massacre targeting his top 40 enemies in Laredo. U.S. law enforcement became aware of the impending attack through an informant who had secured a safe house. However, before authorities could wiretap the safe house to gather information on the hit list, the hit squad discovered another safe house, cutting off contact with the informant. The hit squad managed to execute one of the individuals on the list, Sinaloa boss Resendez, by unleashing a barrage of 90 rounds into his pickup truck on a highway. Eventually, the police tracked down Cardona at the safe house and took him into custody. Cardona, who claimed to have taken the lives of between 20 and 30 people, pleaded guilty to 4 known murders in the United States and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. Among the crimes for which Cardona is serving time is the kidnapping and murder of 2 American teenagers. During this gruesome act, he cut them with a bottle, collected their blood in a glass, and made a chilling toast to La Santa Muerte, the personification of death. Following Cardona's arrest, authorities noted that the murder rate in Laredo had dropped by half. Number 6, El Mini 6. Let's dive into the story of Raúl Meza Torres, also known as El Mini 6. This young Mexican had quite a reputation as a suspected assassin for the Sinaloa Cartel, a notorious criminal group based in Sinaloa. Born on October 31, 1991, in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, he had a notable background. His father, Raúl Meza Ontiveros, held a high-ranking position within the Sinaloa Cartel, and many of his relatives were involved in drug trafficking, just like his father. By the tender age of 15, Meza Torres already aspired to follow in his father's footsteps. He quickly found himself deeply entangled in the organized crime activities of the Sinaloa Cartel. With aspirations of becoming a feared figure like his father, he joined the cartel as one of its young assassins. On social media platforms like Facebook and Metroflog, he proudly displayed multiple pictures of himself posing with firearms, capturing the attention of his friends. They admired him and often commented on how he seemed destined for influence. Interestingly, Meza Torres' popularity on social media platforms didn't end with admiration from his friends. His public image inadvertently inspired other young Mexican boys to pursue careers as hitmen in organized crime. However, his criminal pursuits soon brought him into legal trouble. On October 9, 2007, a few months after his father's death, Meza Torres was pulled over by transit police in the Las Quintas neighborhood of Culiacan. The reason? He was driving an armored vehicle without license plates. Subsequently, he was arrested for not possessing the necessary paperwork that would confirm his ownership of the vehicle. Legal trouble struck again 2 years later. On June 19, 2009, Meza Torres found himself in a precarious situation while drag racing in Las Quintas. When transit police arrived at the scene to intervene, things quickly escalated. Several gunmen emerged from their vehicles and began firing at the officers. A chaotic shootout between the assailants and the police ensued. Eventually, the gunmen managed to escape, leaving one of the vehicles behind. When state authorities arrived to investigate, they discovered that the abandoned vehicle belonged to none other than Meza Torres. Moreover, they found a license plate inside the vehicle that had been reported stolen. Sadly, Meza Torres' life met a tragic end at the age of 18. This happened during a routine traffic stop in Zapopan, Jalisco, on April 25, 2010. According to the police, Meza Torres and one of his accomplices were pulled over. But instead of cooperating, they attempted to intimidate the officers by brandishing their weapons. The officers, remaining calm, requested that they surrender peacefully. However, Meza Torres and his companion launched an attack on the officers. In the ensuing altercation, Meza Torres took the life of one officer but was fatally wounded by another. He was swiftly taken to a private hospital. but tragically, he was pronounced dead that very morning. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Check out this picture. It shows 3 young women covered in tattoos, wearing prison uniforms, sitting together in what looks like a courtroom. It naturally piques curiosity and invites speculation regarding their identities and the nature of their alleged offenses. So who do you think they are, and what do you think they did to end up here? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Number 5. La Barbie. Edgar Valdez Villarreal was born on August 11, 1973, and raised in a middle-class suburb of Laredo, Texas. His family had a fairly normal life, with his father running a local business and instilling values of faith and hard work in their home. Edgar was an active individual and even played football at United High School, earning the nickname La Barbie due to his fair complexion and blue eyes, resembling the famous Ken doll. Now, here's where the story takes a dark turn. While his siblings pursued higher education and started their own businesses, Edgar opted for a different path, becoming an outlaw and climbing the ranks of the criminal underworld. He eventually became a lieutenant in the now-defunct Beltran Leyva cartel, leaving behind a trail of countless casualties in his pursuit of power. Edgar had some early encounters with law enforcement, mainly related to drunken driving and public drunkenness. However, his first arrest came at the age of 19 in Texas. He was charged with criminally negligent homicide for allegedly running over a middle school counselor while speeding down a Laredo street in his truck. Surprisingly, he was never indicted for this incident. In the 1990s, Edgar started his career in drug trafficking, primarily dealing with marijuana. Over time, he graduated to trafficking cocaine, supplying customers in cities like New Orleans and Memphis. He would ship large quantities to distributors in various locations. In 1998, he fled to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico to evade arrest and never returned to the United States. Once in Mexico, he joined a local gang called Los Chachos and became deeply involved in the city's drug trade. During his time in Mexico, Edgar crossed paths with Arturo Beltran Leyva, a prominent figure in the cartel that shared his name. Beltran Leyva had connections with the notorious Sinaloa cartel and its leader, El Chapo. Edgar's fluency in English and Spanish, along with his good looks and charismatic personality, caught the attention of the drug lords, who entrusted him with authority in their operations. By 2009, Edgar had become one of the most wanted drug lords in Mexico, with a $2.3 million bounty on his head. In June 2010, he was indicted in a United States court on charges related to trafficking thousands of kilograms of cocaine from Mexico into the United States between 2004 and 2006. Finally, in 2010, Mexican authorities managed to capture Villarreal as part of then-President Felipe Calderón's crackdown on organized crime. He was later extradited to the United States in 2015 to face the charges against him. In January 2016, he pleaded guilty to conspiring to import and distribute cocaine, as well as conspiring to launder money. 2 years later, a judge in Atlanta sentenced Villarreal to 49 years and 1 month in federal prison, bringing an end to his reign of terror. Number 4. Like father, like son. If you have never heard of El Chapo, the popular former Mexican drug lord, then you must have been living under a rock. Currently serving a life sentence in the United States, he left big shoes to fill, and his son Ovidio Guzman Lopez stepped up to the plate. Ovidio has been involved in his father's drug trafficking business since he was a teenager, starting way back in 2008. Born on March 29, 1990, in the Sinaloa cartel's northwest Mexican region, Ovidio grew up surrounded by opulence, far away from his father's illicit activities. However, following his father's arrest, Ovidio assumed a prominent role within the cartel. Alongside his brothers Ivan Archivaldo Guzman, Jesus Alfredo Guzman, and Ismael El Mayo Zambada, they formed a formidable force known as Los Chapitos. The United States quickly became aware of Ovidio's presence, and he became wanted on numerous drug trafficking charges. Things escalated dramatically on October 17, 2019, when members of the National Guard briefly arrested Ovidio in Culiacan, Sinaloa, triggering intense gun battles throughout the city. The heavily armed cartel gunmen, numbering over 700, made terrifying threats of mass civilian deaths, even targeting the apartment complex housing the relatives of local military personnel. Eventually, Ovidio was freed, with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador supporting the decision to prevent further bloodshed. However, the following month, one of the officers involved in Ovidio's arrest, identified as Eduardo N., was assassinated. In 2021, the United States government offered a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to Ovidio's arrest or conviction. Finally, on January 5, 2023, authorities managed to apprehend Ovidio in the Jesus Maria district of Culiacan. The military executed a daring pre-dawn raid, utilizing helicopters and a convoy of ground vehicles, successfully capturing him within 10 minutes. But it wasn't a straightforward operation. During and after the arrest, 10 soldiers and 19 suspects lost their lives. Enraged gang members set up roadblocks, torched numerous vehicles, and even attacked planes at a local airport. Additionally, 35 military personnel sustained injuries, and 21 gunmen were taken into custody. Ovidio was swiftly extracted by helicopter and transported to the capital before being transferred to a maximum security federal prison. The United States has formally requested Mexico to extradite Ovidio, seeking to hold him accountable for his crimes. It remains to be seen how this high-stakes saga will unfold. Number 3. Reign of Terror. Allow me to introduce you to Antonio Acosta Hernandez, better known as El Diego, a ruthless and cold-blooded killer. He held a position of power as the leader of La Linea, the armed wing of the Juarez drug cartel. Forming an alliance with the Barrio Azteca drug gang, they aimed to control drug trafficking in Ciudad Juarez and Chihuahua, both in Texas and Mexico. El Diego, as the enforcer for La Linea, unleashed a reign of terror under his command. Collaborating with the Barrio Azteca gang, they orchestrated violent attacks against their common enemies. The motive behind these brutal acts was twofold: safeguarding and expanding the alliance's drug importation into the Western District of Texas and other areas, while ensuring the distribution of these illicit substances throughout the United States. After evading authorities for several years, El Diego's luck ran out. He was finally apprehended, along with his bodyguard, in July 2011 in the northern Mexican city of Chihuahua. In the same year, he was extradited to the United States to face justice. During the subsequent legal proceedings, El Diego shockingly confessed to his involvement in the murders of approximately 1,500 individuals in and around Ciudad Juarez. The indictment against him included his participation in the machine gun killings that took place in March 2010. Among the victims were Leslie Ann Enriquez, a United States consulate employee in Juarez, her husband Arthur Redelfs, and Alberto Salcido Caniceros, the spouse of another consulate employee. This brazen attack occurred in broad daylight as the couple left an event hosted by the consulate just across the border from El Paso, Texas. Simultaneously, Salcido Caniceros was killed in another part of the city. In his plea agreement, El Diego admitted to ordering the execution of rival gang members during a birthday party in January 2010, resulting in the deaths of 16 individuals. He also confessed to masterminding a car bombing that claimed the lives of 4 people, including 2 Mexican police officers. As a consequence of his heinous crimes, El Diego received a severe sentence. He was handed 7 concurrent life terms, accompanied by 3 additional consecutive life terms and a 20-year prison sentence in the federal system of the United States. Number 2. El Chino Antrax. José Rodrigo Arechiga Gamboa, better known as El Chino Antrax, was a notorious Mexican drug lord, a skilled hitman, and held a high-ranking position within the Sinaloa cartel. Born on June 15, 1980 in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, Arechiga. Gamboa initially worked as a bodyguard for Vicente Zambada Niebla, the son of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, until 2008. After the split between the Sinaloa organization and the Beltran Leyva cartel that year, he formed Los Antrax, an armed squadron within the Sinaloa cartel, responsible for providing armed security services to El Mayo Zambada. Following Zambada Niebla's arrest in March 2009, Arechiga Gamboa rose to prominence within the Sinaloa cartel. Arechiga Gamboa gained attention not only for his criminal activities, but also for his extravagant lifestyle, which he proudly showcased on social media. He posted pictures and videos of his luxurious trips around the world. His fleet of sports cars, yachts, weapons, jewelry, stacks of money, and extravagant parties. Like many of the younger generation of Mexican drug traffickers, he enjoyed flaunting his lavish lifestyle online. Despite his attempts to maintain anonymity by blurring his face in his social media posts, United States authorities were able to track him down. They identified Arechiga Gamboa through his photos, noticing his distinctive skull-shaped diamond ring, which served as a signature symbol of Los Antrax. Although he used a fake name, underwent plastic surgery to alter his appearance, and even changed his fingerprints, United States law enforcement utilized undisclosed forensic methods to identify him. He was eventually apprehended when he landed in the Netherlands from Mexico on December 31, 2013, and subsequently extradited to the United States. After spending 6 years in custody within the United States, Arechiga was sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in a federal prison. However, on March 3, 2020, he was released and placed under house arrest. Tragically, on the night of May 14, 2020, a Sinaloa cartel hit squad visited Arechiga Gamboa's house where he was present with his sister and her husband. A fierce firefight erupted and lasted until dawn. Eventually, when their ammunition was depleted, they surrendered and were taken hostage by the armed assailants. The following day, the police in the town of Ayun, Sinaloa, discovered a black SUV containing 3 lifeless bodies. One of the bodies was identified as Arechiga Gamboa, while the other 2 were identified as his sister and her husband. It was later reported that his murder was likely ordered by senior leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel. Number 1, the ruthless enforcer of Barrio Azteca. Number 1 on our list is Jesus Ernesto Chavez Castillo, also known as the Camel. He was the lead enforcer for Barrio Azteca after the gang formed an alliance with the Juarez Cartel in 2008. Known as one of the most violent men in Juarez, the Camel's reputation preceded him. After his arrest in 2010, he faced accusations of planning a shooting which occurred in March 2010. The shooting claimed the lives of 3 individuals associated with the United States consulate. He was also implicated in the killings of 13 people at a party in Juarez that same year, where the hitmen mistakenly believed the partygoers, mostly teenagers, were members of the rival Artistas Asesinos drug gang. During the subsequent legal proceedings, the Camel decided to testify against his former boss, Arturo Gallegos Castrellón, the leader of the Barrio Azteca street gang. In his testimony, he revealed that the gang had sent members to Mexico to be trained as ruthless killers by the notorious Zetas drug cartel. He shocked the jury by stating that he had taken the lives of 800 people in the first 8 months of 2000, after which he had lost count. He even admitted to dismembering the corpses to impress his boss. The objective behind these gruesome acts was to create crime scenes so horrifying that they would make headlines. The Camel further disclosed that he had a daily murder quota to meet, a strategy aimed at instilling fear in the police, elected officials, and the general public. Under Castrellón's leadership, the Camel claimed to have contributed to Juarez, Mexico, earning the notorious title of murder capital of the world by ruthlessly eliminating thousands of people over a span of 4 years while working for the cartel. The Camel stated that he agreed to testify against his former boss because he believed it was the right thing to do, given the immense wrongs he had committed. We hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one.